Alright guys, I'm back to making a car video. And this is a video that I really probably should have made earlier, but it's a good time to make it. This video is in regards to people who maybe have never had an experience with restoring an older car, 20 years in an older car. That's what this video is going to pertain to, is more about the 20-year-old cars and older. If there's one major thing that I see, a major phenomenon that happens in the car restoration world, particularly by people who are not experienced or skilled in it, is they think that they can buy one of these older cars and just put a little bit of work into it and the car's gonna be driving fine, normal. And if there's one thing that I can say is I can't tell you how many times I've seen people buy project cars and they'll just sit and they'll never get completed and they'll get passed on to another person who, as funny as it is, they'll go and do the same thing. They have these grand ideas and plans and literally end up doing the exact same thing. They turn around, they make really no progress. Many times they'll actually make the car worse. They start stripping the car and then they make it worse, and then they ended up selling it to someone else. And that even possibly the third person does the same exact thing. And one particular car that I see people doing this with is the S13 240SX, the 1989 to 1993 240SX. It was a very hot, a highly desired car for drifting and modifying prior to, some of these newer cars now being affordable. It was usually back then, if you wanted a higher horsepower car for drifting, you were looking at spending at least like $20,000, whereas you could buy a 240SX for maybe $1,500. You could buy a SR20 swap for like $3,000 and put in a little bit of work. So probably for around $6,000-$7,000, you could have a car that's putting around the same horsepower as like a 283 horsepower, 300 horsepower 350Z. That would cost you about $20,000. Obviously now those days have changed where you can pick up a 350Z. Of course it's beat up now too, but you can pick up a 350Z for, some places, some people are selling for $2,000 non-running to $8,000. Of course they can get more expensive than that. I'm talking about for people who use them for like drifting and things like that. So it's no longer viable for people to build 240SXs because 240SXs are now much more rare, because a lot of people have either trashed them or crashed them drifting and just doing stupid stuff with them. So the chassis itself is rare, and then on top of that, finding one that's actually running is even more rare, and then finding one that's in good shape that's running is even more rare. So the prices are going up, even prices for swaps just in general. The JDM swaps, the 2JZ, Supra engines, the 1JZs, the RBs, the RB20, RB25, RB26, SR20s, you name it. Pretty much all these, JDM engine swaps that we used to use for making our USDM cars more exciting and more powerful, they've all gone up in price. You're looking at even Integra Type R swaps are up $6,000-$7,000 when they used to be like $4,500. Some people are even trying to sell them for like $10,000. So like even an SR swap now, I think is right around $7,000. And that's often not a complete swap. You still need to buy even more parts like, maybe an upgraded turbo, front mount intercooler, sometimes even wire harnesses, downpipes, lots of things, clutches, drive shafts, things like that. So it's made these cars much more difficult to build on a budget. So if there's one thing that I can tell or recommend to people who are looking to restore cars, understand that if you don't do it right the first time, it's going to cause you a lot of headache, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. And one thing that I think that's very common for most people is they don't have the ability to do it right the first time. A lot of people think that they're just going to be able to maybe work on it in their driveway or, you know, outside, and with just some hand tools and a few jacks. And, you know, while maybe some people can do it, most people will not be able to do it. Most people don't even have the motivation to do it. And one thing that happens is there's definitely excitement when you buy a project car for the first, like, maybe few weeks. Trust me, it is going to wear off, and it gets much harder to get motivation to go out and work on the car. And if there's one thing that I can say is you know, most people are lazy. So most people aren't going to follow through and fix every day or as whatever time is needed and money that's needed to properly restore these cars. So I would say that the biggest downfall for these cars is that you have to go into them with the plan that you're basically going to rip the car apart. You're going to strip it down. You're going to pull the engine out, the transmission. You're going to basically take off the suspension, even the interior. You're going to probably take the interior out for the most part so that you can even at least just clean it, because most of the interiors are going to be disgusting, sadly. Most people don't take care of their interiors. But one problem that a lot of people overlook is that most of the things in the engine bay have gotten old. You know, vacuum hoses, sensors, engine mounts, you know, you name it. Lots of plastic gets brittle, rust, connectors. Connectors are, you know, corroded. You know, just lots of oil on the engine and on the front subframe, and in the engine bay. You know, power steering lines can be, I can't tell you how many times I've seen the hard metal power steering lines rusted and have holes in them. You know, sometimes you can't even find OEM parts to replace those. So that makes the restoration process even harder and more expensive. So my suggestion to people is, you know, I know it's exciting to think about the possibilities of restoring a car or modifying a car, but I'm telling you, I would say that probably 80% of the people that are looking to restore the car are going to fail. Either the car's never going to even get done, they're probably going to ruin it even more in the process, which has happened to 240SXs, or the car's going to give them. They will eventually get it running, but the car will never run properly. And I would say that one of the best decisions I've made on pretty much all my projects cars is I pull the engines out. I pull the engine and transmission out, and I go over everything. And I don't even really leave it to chance with things like the brakes and the suspension components. I go into every project car with the idea that I'm going to be changing a lot of stuff, and it's going to get expensive. But I like to do my own work rather than buy, you know, so here's a perfect example. You know, let's just say you're buying a car that traditionally running and in pretty good shape costs you about $10,000, versus you could buy a project car for, hey, we got a G35 that's going to be racing or being by me. Actually, even a 300, Chrysler 300. But, man, where was I? You know, I guess I'll get back to it, where you know, where you have to replace a lot of stuff and you have to take the engines out. I can't tell you how many random parts that I found on the engine that needed to be replaced. Knock sensors, you know, some of those hard to reach sensors, even if they're working, just replace them so that you don't have to change them later on down. Oh, here's where I was. The $10,000 car versus the $2,000 car. I prefer the $2,000 car because it gives me, basically, I look at it as $8,000 that I can play with to get the car running even better than the $10,000 car. So like a perfect example would be, I buy the $2,000 car and I pull the engine and transmission out, I get to replace engine mounts. I get to replace a lot of these hard to reach sensors. I get to make sure that everything is cleaned. I love cleaning parts, getting all the oil, and it allows you, once you clean things, it allows you to inspect to see if any hoses, any things are broken or about to break. You can fix all of that stuff right then and there. You can replace the clutch, engine mounts. Engine mounts will make the car feel a lot better. But things like that, you can use that $8,000 buffer zone to do all of that work, and then basically you will have a better car than the $10,000 car that you would buy, where probably more than likely things like those hard to reach sensors and engine mounts aren't changed. So that's just something to think about, but just understand that it's not easy to do what I'm talking about. That's why most people fail. Just getting a car running doesn't mean that the car is going to run like a new car. Like I always say, the first two things that I love changing on a car are the brakes, the rotors. Oftentimes I actually like to do the calipers, just get rebuilt calipers, change the rotors and the brake pads, and the car feels so much better. But I would say the most drastic improvement that a car will have of these older cars is when you replace the suspension components. You replace the shocks, the springs, the control arms, ball joints, things like that, tie rods. I love replacing all of that stuff all at once because it makes the car significantly tighter. The car just drives much better. That's my favorite part of doing it. And then the next thing would be cleaning interiors. I love cleaning interiors. And then I would say the last part would be actually pulling the engine out and going over everything. You will see a difference, but you will notice a difference. But I highly recommend, as far as like not having any issues, the number one priority is the engine related issues and electrical issues. So you have to kind of go into it thinking that it's a big project, and are you willing to do it and learn from other people that most people fail at it. And there's a reason why. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time thinking and planning. If you don't enjoy it, you're probably going to fail at it. So that's just my suggestion. I know it's nice to dream, and you see these car builders on YouTube. Trust me, you're not seeing the whole story. There's a lot that goes into it. They're making money from the content, so they can justify putting more money into it. So that's just something I think that needed to be kind of talked about, because I think a lot of people don't realize how difficult it is. So I hope this helps some of you guys.